The mining colony of Kepler 442b had seen better days. What started as humanity's most promising frontier settlement had become a grim reminder of how quickly fortunes could change in the galaxy. Sarah Chen wiped the sweat from her brow as she guided the heavy drilling equipment through another section of the crystalline caves beneath the planet's surface. The precious metals they extracted here powered the human war effort against the Draconian Empire. But lately, the work felt more like a death sentence than a duty. Above ground, the settlement's defensive shields hummed with constant strain. The Draconians had been testing their boundaries for weeks now, sending scout ships that probed for weaknesses in their orbital defenses. Everyone knew it was only a matter of time before a full assault came. The dragons were methodical like that. They studied their prey before striking. Sarah had volunteered for the deep mining shifts not because she loved the work, but because someone had to do it. The automated systems had been failing more frequently, and human oversight was the only thing keeping the operation running. At 19, she was one of the youngest workers in the colony, but her steady hands and sharp mind had earned her the respect of the veteran miners. The communication device on her belt crackled to life. "Sarah, this is Control. We're showing some unusual seismic activity in your sector. Everything okay down there?" She paused her work and checked the environmental readings on her scanner. "All readings normal on my end, Control. Might be the tectonic shifts we've been tracking. These caves aren't exactly stable. Copy that. Just keep an eye out. We've got some unusual contacts on long-range sensors. Might be nothing, but the brass is jumpy today." Sarah understood their nervousness. 3 colonies in this sector had gone dark in the past month. When the rescue ships arrived, they found nothing but glass craters where settlements used to be. The Draconian Empire's new weapon, the albino dragon, had become the stuff of nightmares across human space. Unlike the typical Draconian vessels that resembled their reptilian creators, the albino dragon was something different entirely. Intelligence reports described it as a massive pearl-white behemoth that seemed more organic than mechanical. Some survivors claimed it was actually alive, a bioweapon grown rather than built. Others insisted it was just another ship, albeit one designed to strike terror into human hearts. What everyone agreed on was its devastating power. The albino dragon could reduce an entire planet's surface to molten glass in minutes. Its weapons defied human understanding of physics, creating localized gravitational distortions that tore apart both matter and energy. No human ship had ever survived a direct encounter with it. The drilling equipment suddenly shuddered to a halt. Sarah frowned and checked the power readings. Everything looked normal, but the machine refused to respond to her commands. She tried the manual override, but even that failed to restart the system. "Control, I'm having some technical difficulties down here. The main drill has stopped responding." Static filled the comm channel for several seconds before a different voice responded. "Sarah, this is Commander Rodriguez. We need you to evacuate the mines immediately. Long-range sensors have confirmed it. The albino dragon has entered the system." Her blood ran cold. The albino dragon was here at their little mining colony. They had maybe hours before it reached them, possibly less. "Understood, Commander. Beginning emergency ascent now." But as Sarah began packing her equipment, a new sound reached her ears. A low, rhythmic vibration that seemed to come from the very walls of the cave. It wasn't machinery. She knew every sound the mining equipment made. This was something else, something that made her teeth ache and her vision blur slightly. The vibration grew stronger, and suddenly the cave walls began to emit a faint, phosphorescent glow. The crystalline formations that had taken millions of years to form were reacting to something, their molecular structure shifting in ways that shouldn't have been possible. Sarah's scanner began displaying readings that made no sense. Energy signatures were spiking across multiple spectrums, and the gravitational sensors were showing impossible fluctuations. Whatever was causing this, it wasn't natural. It wasn't even technological in any way she understood. The communication device crackled again, but this time the signal was distorted, filled with interference that seemed almost musical in its complexity. "Sarah, respond. Immediate. Danger." She tried to respond, but her voice seemed to be absorbed by the cave walls themselves. The phosphorescent glow was spreading, racing along the crystalline veins that ran through the rock like a vast nervous system awakening after eons of slumber. Then she heard it, a sound that no human throat could make, yet somehow familiar. It was like singing, but deeper than any bass note, resonating through dimensions she couldn't name. The sound seemed to be coming from the planet itself, as if Kepler 442b was trying to communicate. Sarah realized with growing alarm that the seismic activity control had mentioned wasn't random geological movement. Something was stirring beneath the planet's surface, something that had been dormant until now. The mining operations had been going deeper each month, following richer veins of ore. Had they accidentally awakened something that should have remained asleep? Her scanner suddenly went wild, detecting massive energy signatures moving through the rock toward her position. Whatever was down there was big, bigger than any piece of mining equipment, bigger than the entire colony above. And it was moving with purpose, as if it had been waiting for this moment. The cave floor beneath her feet began to warm, and cracks of brilliant light started appearing in the walls. Not the harsh artificial light of her equipment, but something softer, more organic. It reminded her of bioluminescent creatures she'd seen in Earth's deep oceans. Except this light seemed to pulse with intelligence. Sarah grabbed her emergency beacon and activated it, sending her coordinates to the surface. Whatever was happening down here, the colony needed to know. As she prepared to make her way to the emergency shaft, the singing sound grew louder, more complex. It was definitely a language of sorts, though unlike anything in the databases of known alien communications. The walls around her suddenly shifted, and she found herself in a chamber that definitely hadn't existed moments before. The space was vast, carved from living rock into flowing, organic shapes that hurt to look at directly. And there, in the center of the chamber, something was beginning to emerge from what she had thought was solid stone. It was massive, pearl white, and definitely alive. As consciousness flooded back into ancient eyes, Sarah Chen realized she was about to become the first human to make contact with something that had been sleeping beneath Kepler 442b for longer than her species had existed. The question was whether she would live long enough to tell anyone about it. The creature that emerged from the stone was nothing like the albino dragon from the intelligence reports, yet Sarah immediately understood the connection. This being was ancient beyond measure, its pearl-white scales seeming to contain the light of dead stars. As it fully awakened, shaking off millennia of stone sleep, its eyes, deep pools of liquid silver, focused on the small human standing in its chamber. Sarah should have been terrified. Every instinct screamed at her to run, to activate her emergency teleporter, to do anything except stand there staring at a being that could crush her without effort. But something in those ancient eyes held her in place. There was intelligence there, vast and alien, but not malevolent. If anything, she sensed profound sadness. The creature's massive head lowered until it was mere feet from Sarah's position. When it spoke, the words bypassed her ears entirely, resonating directly in her mind with the weight of eons. Young star child, you have awakened me from the long dream. Tell me, how long has it been since my kind walked beneath open sky? The mental voice was gentle despite its overwhelming presence. Sarah found her own voice, though it came out as barely a whisper. I don't know. We've only been on this planet for 5 years. Our records don't show any signs of previous civilization. 5 years. The creature's mental voice carried what might have been amusement, a blink of an eye. I have slept for much longer. The last thing I remember was the Great Burning, when my children took to the void to escape the dying of our homeworld. Sarah's mind raced. Your children? You mean the Draconians? The massive head tilted slightly, an eerily familiar gesture that reminded her of the dragon-like aliens humanity had been fighting. Is that what they call themselves now? Draconians. Yes, they are my offspring, though much changed by their journey through the stars. They were forced to adapt, to become something harder and colder than we ever were. But they're attacking human colonies, Sarah protested. They've destroyed entire worlds, have they? The ancient voice carried genuine surprise. This troubles me greatly. We were once guardians of younger races, protectors of those who had not yet learned to protect themselves. If my children have become destroyers instead? The creature's massive form shifted, and Sarah felt the weight of its sorrow like a physical thing. Above ground, the colony's sensors were going insane. The massive energy signature that had appeared underground was unlike anything in their databases. Commander Rodriguez stared at the readings with growing alarm. Whatever was down there with Sarah Chen was putting out more power than their entire reactor core. Sir, we're getting massive gravitational distortions from the mining sector, reported Lieutenant Kim from the sensor station. And long range is showing the albino dragon has accelerated. It'll be here in 3 hours, not 6. Rodriguez cursed under his breath. They had been hoping for more time to evacuate, but 3 hours wasn't nearly enough to get everyone off planet. What's the status on Sarah Chen? Still underground, sir. Her beacon is active, but we can't establish communication. The interference is too strong. In the chamber below, Sarah was learning things that would reshape humanity's understanding of the galaxy. The creature, who called itself Ethon the Star Warden, had been the last guardian of the ancient dragon civilization. When their star began to die, the younger dragons had fled into space, carrying with them the technology and knowledge needed to survive in the void. But you stayed behind, Sarah said, beginning to understand. Someone had to remain. The old songs, the deep knowledge, the connection to the worlds we had protected, all of this would have been lost if none remained to remember. I thought to sleep until the star renewed itself or until my children returned. The star didn't renew itself, Sarah said gently. This isn't your original world. This is Kepler 442b, your star. It died long ago. The grief that emanated from Ethan was profound, but there was something else. Determination. Then my vigil has meaning still. If my children have forgotten their purpose, if they have become the very thing we once stood against, then it falls to me to remind them. Sarah's communication device suddenly crackled to life, the interference clearing for a moment. Sarah, respond. The albino dragon will be here in 3 hours. We need you on the surface now. She looked up at the massive creature, suddenly understanding something terrible. The albino dragon that's coming. It's one of your children, isn't it? Yes. Ethan's mental voice was heavy with certainty. I can feel its approach. Valdris the Pale Death once called Valdris the Lightbringer. He was among the first to leave, among the strongest. If he has come here, it is not for conquest, it is for extermination. We have to stop him, Sarah said, though the words felt inadequate against the scope of what they faced. We? There was something that might have been warmth in the ancient voice. Young star child, you would stand with me against one of my own children? Your children are killing mine, Sarah replied, surprising herself with her firmness. Innocent people who never did anything to them. If you were truly guardians once, then help me protect them now. Ethan was quiet for a long moment, and Sarah wondered if she had overstepped some crucial boundary. Then the massive creature began to move, stone and crystal flowing around its form like water. You have courage, little one. Courage and wisdom. Very well. Let us see if an old guardian still remembers how to fight. The chamber around them began to change, ancient mechanisms awakening after eons of slumber. The crystalline formations that ran through the planet's crust started to resonate, creating a harmonic frequency that reached deep into space. Sarah realized that the entire planet was some kind of massive array, a weapon or communication system built by the ancient dragons. But first, Ethan continued, you must understand what we face. Valdris was not just strong, he was brilliant. He will have seen the signs of my awakening by now. He will know that something on this world opposes him. Is that bad? It means he will not simply destroy the planet from orbit. He will come down to face me directly, and when he does, young star child, everything you think you know about power will be proven insufficient. Sarah felt the weight of destiny settling on her shoulders. 3 hours until the most powerful weapon in the Draconian fleet arrived to destroy her home. 3 hours to figure out how to help an ancient dragon reclaim a wayward child who had become a monster. 3 hours to somehow save not just her colony, but potentially change the course of the war itself. The crystalline formations around them pulsed brighter, and Sarah realized that Ethan was preparing for battle. After sleeping for millions of years, the last Star Warden was about to awaken fully. She just hoped the galaxy was ready for what that meant. The planet's surface erupted in a controlled symphony of ancient technology as Ethan began his full awakening. Sarah watched in amazement as crystalline spires burst from the ground around the colony, their surfaces gleaming with power that made the air itself shimmer. The human colonists above scrambled in panic, thinking they were under attack. But Commander Rodriguez quickly realized these structures were defensive in nature. All units, hold fire, he commanded over the general comm. Unknown structures appeared to be shielding the colony, not targeting it. In the depths below, Sarah was witnessing the resurrection of technology that predated human civilization by millions of years. Ethan's massive form was becoming more substantial, more real, as if his awakening was pulling matter from the quantum foam itself. The pearl-white scales that covered his hide began to emit a soft radiance that filled the chamber with warmth. The network is responding. Ethan's mental voice carried notes of satisfaction mixed with sorrow. Though much has been lost to time, the planetary defense grid still functions. Your people will be protected when Valdris arrives. But will it be enough? Sarah asked, watching streams of data flow through the crystalline formations like liquid light. Against Valdris? No, the defenses will buy us time, nothing more. My wayward child has grown strong in his exile, and his rage burns like a dying star. But time is what we need. Through their mental connection, Sarah began to understand the scope of what Ethan was planning. The ancient dragon wasn't just preparing defenses, he was preparing to communicate. The crystalline network that spanned the planet was, among other things, a massive transmitter capable of reaching across galactic distances. You're going to call for help, she realized. I am going to call them home. Ethan corrected. All of them. Every dragon ship in the void. Every child of mine who has forgotten their true purpose. It is time for the family to reunite. The implications hit Sarah like a physical blow. If Ethan could recall every draconian ship to this one planet, the war would effectively end. Either in humanity's complete destruction or in something unprecedented. A chance for peace. What if they don't listen? She asked. Then I will remind them what they once were. And if that fails, the ancient voice carried steel beneath its sadness. Then I will do what any parent must do when their children have become monsters. Above ground, the panic was subsiding as the colonists realized the spires weren't attacking them. Instead, they were creating an energy barrier that extended high into the atmosphere. Commander Rodriguez watched the tactical displays in amazement as their defensive capabilities suddenly increased by several orders of magnitude. Sir, Lieutenant Kim called from her station. We're receiving a signal from underground. It's Sarah Chen, but the transmission is unusual. Put her through. The voice that came through the speakers was still recognizably Sarah's, but it carried harmonics that made the words resonate in ways that seemed to bypass the ears entirely. Commander, this is Sarah. I'm safe, but I need you to listen very carefully. We're about to receive help from an unexpected source. When the albino dragon arrives, do not engage. Repeat, do not engage under any circumstances. Sarah, what's your status? What's happening down there? I'm with a friend. Someone who's going to help us end this war. But Commander, you need to trust me. No matter what happens in the next few hours, no matter what you see, don't interfere. Rodriguez exchanged glances with his senior staff. Sarah Chen was one of their most level-headed colonists, but what she was asking seemed like madness. Sarah, we can't just let the albino dragon attack without defending ourselves. It won't attack the colony. Sarah's voice carried absolute certainty. Trust me, Commander. I know how this sounds, but if you want to save not just our colony but potentially end the war entirely, you need to let this play out. Before Rodriguez could respond, the transmission cut off. He stared at the silent speakers, knowing he had to make an impossible decision. Follow protocol and prepare for battle, or trust a 19-year-old miner who claimed to have found a way to end the war. Deep beneath the surface, Ethan was nearing full awakening. The chamber had expanded to accommodate his true size, and Sarah finally understood why the ancient dragons had been called Star Wardens. Ethan was massive beyond comprehension, his form somehow containing more space than should have been possible. When he moved, reality seemed to bend around him. The call has been sent, he informed her. Every dragon in the void will hear it, feel it in their bones. They will come if only to see what has awakened the deepest song. How long do we have? For Valdris? Minutes now. For the others? Some will arrive within hours, others may take days. But they will come. Sarah felt the planet shudder as something massive dropped out of hyperspace high above. Through the network of crystalline sensors, she could perceive the albino dragon in all its terrible glory. The ship, for she could see now that it was indeed a ship, though one grown rather than built, was enormous. Its pearl-white hull rippled with organic patterns, and she could sense the malevolent intelligence that guided it. He knows I'm here, Ethan said quietly. He can feel the awakening just as I can feel his approach. He is angry. At you? At everything. Valdris was always the most passionate of my children, the one who felt things most deeply. When we lost our homeworld, when we were forced to scatter across the stars, it broke something in him. He has spent millennia nurturing that rage, feeding on it. The albino dragon descended through the atmosphere like a falling moon. its weapons charging with energies that made space itself writhe. But as it approached the colony, something unexpected happened. The ship suddenly stopped, hovering motionless above the crystalline spires. Through the network, Sarah could hear an exchange taking place on frequencies that human ears could never detect. It was a conversation between parent and child, conducted in harmonics that spoke directly to the soul. Father. The voice of Valdris the Pale Death carried across the network, and even filtered through the crystalline array. Sarah could hear the pain and rage that drove him. You should have remained asleep. The time of the Star Wardens has passed. Has it, my child? Ethan's response was gentle but firm. Have you forgotten what we once swore to protect? I have forgotten nothing. The fury in Valdris's voice made the planet tremble. I remember the younger races we sheltered, how they grew strong and then turned on us. I remember the wars, the betrayals, the endless cycle of violence that only ended when we learned to be the monsters they claimed we were. And yet here you are, about to destroy another colony of innocents. Tell me, my son, how is this different from what those ancient enemies did to us? The silence that followed was profound. For a moment, Sarah dared to hope that Ethan's words were reaching the broken soul of his wayward child. But then Valdris's voice returned, colder than the void between stars. Because this time, we will be the last ones standing. The albino dragon's weapons reached full charge, energies that could crack a planet building and its organic batteries. But before it could fire, something else happened. The crystalline network erupted in a new harmony, one that carried a very human voice. Sarah, drawing on the connection Ethan had shared with her, added her own voice to the ancient song. Then you'll have to go through me first. The moment Sarah's voice joined the ancient harmony, everything changed. Valdris's weapons powered down not by choice but by shock. Through the crystalline network, his consciousness recoiled as if struck by something impossible. The voice that had just challenged him wasn't dragon. It was something else entirely, something young and fierce and utterly unafraid. What is this? Valdris's mental voice carried confusion for the first time in millennia. Father, what have you done? In the depths below, Ethan regarded Sarah with something approaching wonder. No dragon had ever shared the deep song with an alien species. The harmonics required a resonance of soul that most believed was impossible across species barriers. Yet this small human had somehow synchronized with frequencies older than her star. I have done nothing, my child, Ethan replied through the network. She chose this herself. Sarah felt the weight of Valdris's attention like a physical thing, his consciousness pressing against hers through the crystalline array. She could sense his confusion, his rage, and beneath it all a pain so profound it threatened to drown her. This being had been carrying the grief of an entire civilization for millions of years. You dare stand with him against me, little star child? Valdris's voice carried deadly promise. Do you know what I am? What I have done to 1,000 worlds. I know what you were, Sarah replied, her voice steady despite the cosmic forces focused on her. Valdris the Lightbringer, guardian of the young races, protector of those who couldn't protect themselves. The silence that followed was deafening. Through the network, Sarah could feel Valdris's shock as she spoke his original name, the title he had carried before pain transformed him into the Pale Death. That name is dead, he finally responded, but his voice lacked its earlier certainty. Is it? Sarah pressed, drawing strength from Ethan's presence beside her. Because right now you're hovering over a colony of 20,000 people who never did anything to hurt you. Children, families, people just trying to build a life on a distant world. The Valdris who was a Lightbringer would have protected them. The Valdris who was a Lightbringer was naive. The rage returned, but now it was tinged with something else. Desperate justification. I learned the truth about young races. They grow strong and then they turn on their protectors. Better to end them before they can betray you. Some do, Sarah admitted, and felt both dragons' surprise at her honesty.
Some humans have done terrible things.
We've fought wars, destroyed environments, hurt each other in ways that shame me. But some of us try to be better. Some of us learn from our mistakes. Above ground, Commander Rodriguez watched the impossible standoff between the albino dragon and the mysterious spires. His tactical officer was reporting that the enemy ship's weapons had powered down, but he couldn't understand why. The ship was close enough to destroy them all, but it just waited. Sir, Lieutenant Kim called from her station. We're receiving additional contacts on long-range sensors. Multiple ships dropping out of hyperspace across the system. Rodriguez felt his blood chill. If the albino dragon had called for reinforcements, the colony was doomed. Classification? Unknown, sir. The signatures they're similar to the albino dragon, but different. Like variations on a theme. In the underground chamber, Ethan's massive head turned toward Sarah. They are coming. My children are answering the call. But they will not all come with peaceful intentions. How many? Sarah asked. I can sense 17 different signatures. Old friends, bitter enemies, children I have not seen since the Great Scattering. They will arrive expecting to find their father dead or dying. Instead, they will find him awake and allied with a human. Through the network, Sarah could feel Valdris's growing agitation as more ships appeared on his sensors. What have you done, father? Why have you called them here? Because it is time, Ethan replied simply. Time to remember what we once were. Time to choose what we will become. The first of the new arrivals broke atmosphere, a ship similar to Valdris's but colored deep emerald green, its hull inscribed with flowing patterns that hurt to look at directly. Through the network, Sarah heard a new voice, this one carrying notes of curiosity rather than rage. Father? Is it truly you? After all these eons? Hello, Lyrelei the Dreamweaver. Ethan responded with genuine warmth. Yes, my daughter, it is truly me. But how? The homeworld died. We felt it from across the galaxy. You should have. I chose to remain. To remember. To wait for the day when my children might need guidance again. A third ship arrived, this one midnight black with silver tracery across its hull. Its mental voice was sharp, suspicious. A trap. It has to be a trap. The humans have found some way to mimic the deep song. Hello, Corvain the Shadowbane, Ethan said dryly. Still seeing conspiracies everywhere, I see. Careful words from one who speaks with human voices. This was the moment Sarah had been dreading. Through the network, she could feel the attention of multiple dragon lords focusing on her. Ancient minds probing her consciousness with casual ease. She was a minnow among whales, a single candle in a forest of suns. But she was also the reason they had stopped fighting. My name is Sarah Chen, she said, her voice carrying across frequencies that spanned star systems. I'm 19 years old, I mine crystals for a living, and 6 hours ago I thought dragons were just really angry aliens with big ships. But I've learned something today that I think you all need to hear. Speak, young one, said Lyrelei, her mental voice gentle. Your family, Sarah said simply. You're hurt, angry, scattered family who've forgotten how to love each other. You've spent millions of years thinking you were alone, that your father was dead, that your purpose was lost. But he's been here the whole time waiting for you to come home. Pretty words, Corvain snarled. But humans are parasites. They take what they need and destroy what they cannot use. Some do, Sarah agreed again. But some dragons destroy entire colonies of innocents because they're afraid of being hurt again. We all have monsters in our ranks. The question is whether we're going to judge entire species by their worst examples. More ships were arriving now. 7, 9, 12. The space around Kepler 442b was filling with weapons that could sterilize solar systems. But they weren't firing. They were listening. She has a point, said a new voice, deep and thoughtful. We have become what we once fought against. Wisdom from Theron the Truth Seeker, Ethan said approvingly. I have missed your counsel, old friend. And I have missed having a cause worth counseling for, Theron replied. Tell me, Father, what would you have us do? The war has been raging for decades. Billions are dead on both sides. I would have you remember your oaths, Ethan said firmly. I would have you look at this one small human and ask yourselves, is she your enemy? Or is she exactly the kind of being you once swore to protect? Valdris had been silent through this reunion, but now his voice cut through the growing harmony with renewed fury. Enough! Father, you ask us to abandon millions of years of survival instinct for the words of one human child? I ask you to find the strength to try something other than endless war, Ethan replied. But you are free to choose, my children. You have always been free to choose. The tension in the network was growing unbearable. Sarah could feel the Dragon Lord's minds wrestling with concepts that challenged everything they had become. Some were wavering, considering the possibility of change. Others remained firm in their conviction that only strength mattered, and then Valdris made his choice. Then I choose to end this before it can begin, he declared, and the albino dragon's weapons began to charge once more. The moment Valdris began charging his weapons, the space around Kepler 442b erupted into chaos. 16 other dragon ships powered their own armaments, but not all of them targeted the colony. The family reunion Ethan had orchestrated was fracturing along ancient lines of loyalty and philosophy. "Valdris, stand down." Lyrelai's voice carried desperate authority. "She is under Father's protection." "Father's protection means nothing," Valdris snarled back. "He has been sleeping while we bled. He doesn't understand what the galaxy has become." Corvain's midnight ship moved to flank Valdris. "The Pale Death speaks truth. We cannot afford weakness now." But Theron the Truthseeker positioned his massive vessel between Valdris and the planet. Weakness or wisdom? When did we become so afraid of hope that we attack it on sight? In the underground chamber, Sarah felt the weight of galactic history pressing down on her. Through the crystalline network, she could sense the dragons choosing sides, ancient alliances reasserting themselves as the family split apart. What had begun as a chance for reconciliation was becoming the catalyst for civil war. "They're going to fight," she said to Ethan. "Because of me, because of what I said. They're going to destroy each other." "No." Ethan's mental voice was calm despite the chaos above. "They are going to choose. For the first time in millions of years, they are being forced to decide what they truly believe. That choice was always going to be painful." The first shots were fired between Valdris and Theron, energies that could crack moons lancing through the void. But the weapons weren't aimed to kill, not yet. These were warning shots, challenges, the cosmic equivalent of bared teeth. Commander Rodriguez watched the battle developing in space and felt utterly helpless. "All defensive systems online," he ordered, though he knew their weapons were useless against such forces. "Prepare for evacuation." "Sir," Lieutenant Kim interrupted, "we're receiving a transmission from one of the ships. Audio only. Put it through." The voice that emerged from the speakers was ancient, tired but filled with gentle authority. "Commander Rodriguez, this is Lyrelai of the Emerald Fleet. Please maintain your current position and do not attempt to flee. Your safety is my personal responsibility." Rodriguez stared at the speakers. A dragon ship was offering to protect them. Thank you? Can I ask why?" "Because the young woman in your mining colony has reminded me of something I had forgotten." Sometimes the greatest strength is knowing when not to use it. Meanwhile, more dragons were making their choices. A cluster of 5 ships moved to support Valdris, their collective mental voices joining his in condemnation of Ethan's weakness. But 6 others positioned themselves as protectors of the planet, creating a defensive formation that blazed with righteous purpose. The remaining ships held back, their lords wrestling with decisions that would reshape the galaxy. In the depths below, Sarah made a decision of her own. "I'm going up there." "What?" Ethan's massive head swung toward her in alarm. "Young one, the battle above is beyond anything your kind can survive." "Not to fight," Sarah clarified, her voice steady despite the insanity of what she was proposing. "To talk. They're fighting about me, about what I represent. Maybe they need to see me face to face. The vacuum of space alone would kill you in seconds. Then don't send me into vacuum." Sarah gestured at the crystalline formations around them. "This network can do more than just communicate, can it? You're connected to every structure on the planet's surface. Can you extend that connection?" Ethan was quiet for a moment, considering possibilities that were both technically feasible and utterly unprecedented. "I could, yes. The network could sustain a localized field around you, provide atmosphere and protection. But Sarah, what you're suggesting is madness. These are beings who can restructure matter with their thoughts. And they're fighting because one human girl stood up to them." Sarah replied. "Maybe it's time they met that girl in person." Above, the standoff was escalating. Valdris had moved closer to the planet, his weapons locked onto the crystalline spires that protected the colony. "Father, call off your defenders and I will make their end quick." "I cannot do that, my son." "Cannot? Or will not?" "Both. The choice is yours, Valdris." "It has always been yours." That was when Sarah emerged from the underground complex, rising through the planet's atmosphere in a bubble of crystalline energy that made her look like a small star. The sight of a human floating unprotected in the void, completely vulnerable yet somehow serene, brought every weapon system to a halt. "Hello," Sarah said, her voice carrying across the void through the network's quantum harmonics. "I think we need to talk." The silence was profound. 17 Dragon Lords, beings who had shaped the fate of galaxies, stared at a 19-year-old miner who had just casually violated several laws of physics to attend their family reunion. You're insane, Corvain stated with something approaching admiration. Probably, Sarah agreed cheerfully. But I'm also right, and you all know it. She turned her attention to Valdris, whose massive ship hung before her like a pearl moon carved with pain. Valdris the Lightbringer, that's who you really are, isn't it? Under all the rage and fear, you're still the dragon who once protected species like mine. I am Valdris the Pale Death, he replied. But his voice lacked conviction. The Lightbringer died with our homeworld, did he? Or did he just get really, really tired? Sarah's voice was gentle, understanding. You've been carrying the grief of an entire civilization for millions of years. That would break anyone, but breaking doesn't mean dying, and it doesn't mean you can't heal. You don't understand. Valdris's voice cracked with eons of pain. The things I've done, the worlds I've burned. There is no healing from that. There's forgiveness, Sarah said simply. Not forgetting, not pretending it didn't happen, but choosing to be better going forward. Your father forgave you the moment you arrived here. Your siblings are choosing to forgive you right now. The only person who can't forgive Valdris the Pale Death is Valdris the Lightbringer. Around them, the other dragons watched in fascination as a human child performed therapy on a being who could unmake star systems. But more than that, they were seeing something they had thought lost forever. One of their own remembering how to feel hope. Even if what you say is true, Valdris said slowly, the war cannot simply end. Too much blood has been spilled. My followers expect victory, not peace. Then give them something better than victory, Sarah replied. Give them purpose. Give them the chance to be what you all once were, guardians instead of destroyers. She gestured toward the stars around them. The galaxy is full of young species who need protection. Not from you, but from the real threats out there. Pirates, slavers, cosmic disasters, things that prey on the weak. Be the dragons who stand between the innocent and the darkness. And if they refuse? Asked Corvain. If they choose to follow the old path of conquest? Sarah's expression hardened. Then they'll have to go through all of us to continue. Every dragon who remembers what honor means. Every human who's willing to fight for something bigger than themselves. Sometimes the only way to stop a bully is to bloody their nose. Above them all, Ethan's voice resonated with pride and love. Wisdom from one so young. My children, you have heard her words. Now you must choose. Will you be the dragons who ended the war or the ones who chose to continue it? The decision when it came was swift. Lyrelai was the first to speak. I choose peace. Theron nodded his massive head. As do I. One by one, the other dragons made their choices. Some chose peace, some chose neutrality, and a few chose to remain loyal to the old ways of war. But the majority had heard something in Sarah's words that resonated with forgotten dreams. Only Valdris remained silent. His weapon still charged, his choice still unmade. And in that silence, the fate of the galaxy hung in the balance. The silence stretched across the void like a held breath. Valdris's ship hung motionless in space, its weapons charged but not yet fired, its lord wrestling with a decision that would echo through eternity. Sarah floated in her crystalline bubble, small and fragile against the cosmic backdrop, yet somehow the center around which the fate of civilizations revolved. You ask too much, Valdris finally whispered, his mental voice barely audible across the network. You ask me to betray everything I have become. I'm asking you to remember everything you once were, Sarah replied gently. Before the pain, before the rage, before you convinced yourself that cruelty was the only way to survive. Who were you then, Valdris? Through the network, every dragon present could feel their brother's memories stirring. Images flowed unbidden through the quantum link. A younger Valdris standing guard over a primitive world, his pearl-white scales gleaming as he scattered a pirate fleet that had come to raid the helpless beings below, the joy in his voice as he taught young species their first lessons about the stars, the gentle patience with which he had nurtured entire civilizations. I was naive, Valdris said, but his voice wavered. You were hopeful, Sarah corrected. You believed things could get better. You were willing to risk everything to protect beings you'd never met because it was the right thing to do. And look where it led. The rage returned, but it was desperate now, a wounded animal lashing out. They turned on us. Every single species we helped, every civilization we nurtured, they all betrayed us in the end. Not all of them, Theron interjected quietly. The Kalari still sing songs of your protection. The Nexari built monuments to your kindness. Yes, some betrayed us, but others remembered. And died for it when we weren't there to protect them anymore. Valdris shot back. Because we chose to leave, Lyrelei added, her voice heavy with her own regrets. Because we let fear drive us away from our purpose. But we're here now, brother. We could choose differently. Sarah watched the interplay of ancient relationships, feeling the weight of millions of years of shared history. These beings had been family once, united in purpose and love. The war hadn't just hurt their enemies, it had broken them apart from each other. What if we tried something different? She asked, her voice cutting through the growing argument. What if instead of conquering worlds or abandoning them, you worked with them? Partnership instead of domination? Corvain's ship shifted position, his mental voice sharp with skepticism. Humans speak of partnership when they need assistance, then claim credit when the work is done. Some do, Sarah admitted. But not all. And dragons speak of protection while burning worlds to ash. Some of you have forgotten how to do anything but destroy, but not all. She turned her attention back to Valdris, floating closer to his massive ship despite the terrifying energies that surrounded it. You're afraid, she said simply. You're afraid that if you try to be good again, if you let yourself hope again, you'll just get hurt worse than before. I am not afraid of anything, Valdris replied, but the words rang hollow. You're afraid of me, Sarah continued, her voice steady and sure. One 19-year-old human girl who doesn't know enough to be scared of you. Because if I can stand here and believe you can be better, then maybe you have to believe it too. The weapons on Valdris's ship suddenly powered down, not because of any conscious decision, but because the being controlling them was shaking too hard to maintain the targeting lock. Through the network, every dragon could feel their brother's pain as millions of years of suppressed grief finally broke free. I have done such terrible things, Valdris whispered, his mental voice broken. So many worlds, so many innocents. How can there be forgiveness for that? There can't be, Sarah said, and felt every dragon recoil in shock at her honesty. Not complete forgiveness. Not erasure of what you've done. But there can be redemption. There can be the choice to stop adding to the pile of terrible things and start adding to the pile of good things instead. She gestured toward the colony below them. 20,000 people down there. Right now, right here. You can choose to let them live instead of making them another statistic. That's not forgiveness, that's just the right thing to do. And then? Valdris asked. What comes after this moment of mercy? Then you find another moment to be merciful. And another. And another. Until mercy becomes habit and habit becomes nature, and nature becomes who you are again. Ethan's voice resonated from the planet below, filled with paternal love and pride. My son, you carry the weight of your choices, as we all do. But you do not carry them alone. Your family is here. Let us help bear the burden. Around them, the other dragons began to move closer, their ships forming not a battle formation but a circle of support around their wounded brother. Even those who had been preparing to fight alongside him were reconsidering their positions. The war doesn't have to end with conquest, Lyrelei said softly. It could end with something better. It could end with understanding. The humans will never trust us, one of the uncommitted dragons interjected. Too much blood has been spilled. Trust has to start somewhere, Sarah replied. It starts with one person choosing to believe another person can be better than they've been. And then another person making that choice. And another. She looked around at the assembled fleet, these ancient beings who held the power to reshape the galaxy. You could be legends, not as conquerors, not as destroyers, but as the dragons who chose to end a war instead of winning it. Commander Rodriguez, watching from the colony's surface, could hardly believe what he was seeing. The massive ships that had been preparing for battle were now talking. His sensors were picking up complex energy patterns that suggested communication rather than weapons targeting. Sir, Lieutenant Kim called from her station. Long-range sensors are detecting additional contacts. Lots of them. Human ships approaching from multiple vectors. Rodriguez felt his heart sink. If the human fleet arrived to find their colony in the middle of a dragon summit, the fragile peace Sarah had somehow created would shatter instantly. ETA? He asked. 3 hours, sir. Sarah heard the report through her connection to the colony's communication systems and felt the same dread. 3 hours to convince not just the dragons to choose peace, but to figure out how to explain that choice to incoming human commanders who had been fighting for their species' survival. We need to move fast, she said to the assembled dragons. In 3 hours, this place is going to be full of human warships. If they arrive to find you here, they're going to assume the worst and start shooting. Let them come, Corvain said grimly. If they choose violence, they will find us ready. No. Sarah's voice cracked like a whip across the network. That's exactly the kind of thinking that started this war in the first place. Someone has to choose to be better first. Someone has to be brave enough to not shoot first and ask questions later. She turned to Valdris, floating closer to his ship, until she was almost touching its hull. You want redemption? Here's your chance. 3 hours to figure out how to keep both our species from destroying each other out of fear and misunderstanding. Valdris was quiet for a long moment, his massive consciousness wrestling with concepts that had been foreign to him for eons. When he finally spoke, his voice carried a determination that hadn't been there since his youth. Very well, small prophet. Tell me what you need. The next 3 hours became a whirlwind of impossible diplomacy. Sarah found herself at the center of negotiations that would have challenged seasoned ambassadors, coordinating between dragon lords who measured their ages in geological epochs and human commanders who had never imagined peace was possible. The plan that emerged was audacious in its simplicity. When the human fleet arrived, they would find the colony intact and protected by a defensive grid that clearly demonstrated the dragon's superior technology. But instead of a show of force, it would be a demonstration of restraint. 17 ships that could have destroyed the entire system, choosing instead to shield human civilians. Valdris had positioned his ship at the center of the formation, his pearl-white hull gleaming like a beacon of hope against the void. It was a gesture that went beyond symbolism. The most feared weapon in the Draconian fleet was now its most visible protector. The human commanders will not believe it, Corvain warned as they made their final preparations. They will assume deception, trap, some ploy to lower their defenses. Then we give them proof they can't deny, Sarah replied. She had spent the last 2 hours working with Ethan and the Dragon Lords to prepare something unprecedented. A complete technical readout of human defensive capabilities versus draconian technology, demonstrating exactly how outmatched humanity had always been. If we wanted to destroy them, Theron rumbled, this data will show them we could have done it at any time. The fact that they still exist will be proof of our restraint. Admiral Harrison's fleet dropped out of hyperspace exactly on schedule, weapons hot and ready for battle. The veteran commander had been fighting dragons for 15 years, and he'd never seen anything like the formation that awaited him. 17 draconian ships arranged in perfect defensive positions around a human colony, but defending it, not attacking it. All ships, hold position, Harrison commanded, his voice tight with confusion. Sensors, give me everything you can on those ships. Sir, confirmed identification on the central vessel. It's the albino dragon, but, sir, it's not moving to attack. None of them are. They appear to be maintaining a protective formation around the colony. Before Harrison could respond, his communications officer called out, Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from the colony, audio and visual. Put it through. The face that appeared on the main screen was young, female, and completely calm despite floating in what appeared to be open space, surrounded by enemy ships. Admiral Harrison, my name is Sarah Chen. I'm a mining engineer from the Kepler 442b colony, and I need to talk to you about ending this war. Harrison stared at the impossible sight. Ms. Chen, are you under duress? Are the Draconians holding you hostage? Sarah's laugh was genuine and slightly hysterical. Admiral, if they wanted to hurt me, there are easier ways than forcing me to make diplomatic overtures. No, I'm here because these dragons, and they prefer that term to Draconians, want to discuss peace. Peace? Harrison's voice was flat with disbelief. Ms. Chen, that ship behind you has destroyed 17 human colonies. The being commanding it is responsible for millions of deaths. I know, Sarah said quietly, and he knows too. That's why he wants to stop. A new voice joined the transmission, speaking in harmonics that seemed to bypass the translation software and speak directly to the mind. Admiral Harrison, I am Valdris, called by your people the Pale Death. I wish to speak of ending what should never have begun. Harrison felt his blood chill as he heard the voice of humanity's greatest nightmare. Every tactical manual in the fleet had chapters devoted to this being, this living weapon that had haunted human space for decades. Why? Harrison asked simply. Why now? Because a young human reminded me of something I had forgotten. That strength without purpose is merely destruction, and destruction without end serves no one. Sarah took over the conversation, her voice carrying across space with surprising authority. Admiral, I'm transmitting data that proves these ships could have ended humanity at any time. They're still here because some part of them never wanted to be our enemies. As the technical data flooded the human fleet's computers, a stunned silence fell over every ship. The analysis was undeniable. Humanity had been fighting with stone knives against plasma cannons, surviving only because their enemies had been holding back. Sir, Harrison's tactical officer whispered, if this data is accurate, we never had a chance. They could have. Why are we still alive? Before Harrison could answer, another voice joined the transmission. Ancient, deep, and filled with paternal warmth. Because, Admiral, my children remember what they once swore to protect. Even in their pain, even in their rage, some part of them remembered their oaths. Who are you? Harrison asked. I am Ethan the Star Warden, the last guardian of the ancient dragon homeworld. I have awakened to call my children home to remind them of their true purpose. Sarah gestured toward the dragon ships around her. Admiral, what if the greatest victory humanity could win wasn't defeating our enemies but helping them remember how to be our friends? The next hour was unlike anything in recorded history. 17 dragon lords and 1 human admiral sat down at a negotiating table that existed only in quantum space. Their representatives' minds linked through crystalline technology older than Earth's moon. The terms they hammered out were simple in concept, revolutionary in practice. The war would end not with conquest but with alliance. Dragon technology would help accelerate human development, while human innovation would help the dragons reconnect with their lost empathy. The galaxy was vast enough for both species to thrive, and dangerous enough that they were stronger together than apart. But the real breakthrough came when Valdris made an unprecedented offer. I will stand trial, he announced, his mental voice carrying across the network. For my crimes, for the worlds I have burned, for the lives I have taken, I will face judgment from those I have wronged. That's not necessary, Sarah protested. The goal is moving forward, not it is necessary, Valdris interrupted gently. For my own healing, if nothing else, I cannot simply declare myself redeemed. That judgment must come from others. Admiral Harrison was quiet for a long moment, then spoke words that would echo through history. The dead cannot forgive you, Valdris, but the living can choose to let you try to be better. What matters now is what you do with the time you have left. 6 months later, Sarah Chen stood on the observation deck of Harmony Station, the first joint human-dragon facility ever built. Through the transparent aluminum windows, she could see ships from both species docked together, their crews working side by side on projects that would have been unimaginable a year ago. Valdris had kept his word about standing trial. The proceedings had been difficult, painful, but ultimately healing for both species. He now served as a guardian again, leading joint patrols against the pirates and slavers that preyed on developing worlds. It wasn't absolution, but it was purpose. Remarkable. Ethan's voice resonated through the station's quantum communication system. The ancient dragon had chosen to remain on Kepler 442b, turning the planet into a center of learning where both species could study together. A year ago, such cooperation would have been impossible. It still is impossible, Sarah replied with a grin. We're just too stubborn to admit it. She watched a group of human children playing with young dragons in the station's recreational area, their laughter carrying easily across species barriers. The future was far from certain. There were still dragon factions that refused peace, still human colonies that shot first and asked questions later. But for the first time in decades, there was hope. Commander Rodriguez joined her at the observation window, now wearing the insignia of a diplomatic liaison. Any regrets about not finishing your mining degree? Sarah laughed, thinking about the girl who had descended into crystal caves to do routine maintenance and somehow ended up reshaping galactic politics. Not really, though I do miss the simple days when the biggest decision I had to make was which tunnel to explore next. Well, Rodriguez said with a smile, there's an entire galaxy out there waiting to be explored, and now we don't have to do it alone. As if summoned by his words, Valdris's ship appeared in the distance, returning from a patrol mission with a human escort. The albino dragon that had once been the terror of human space now served as its protector, its pearl-white hull no longer a harbinger of destruction but a symbol of redemption. Sarah pressed her hand against the window, remembering the moment when she had chosen to speak rather than run, to hope rather than despair. The universe was vast and dangerous and full of wonders beyond imagining. But it was also full of people, human and dragon alike, who were willing to choose courage over fear, understanding over hatred, tomorrow over yesterday. And sometimes, that was enough to change everything.